Welcome to Seoultron. Before I start my top 10 list, I figured we'd look at my collection. So on my display shelf, this is the Transformer shelf, and the Earthgranner shelf, and then the Beast Wars shelf, and then finally the Toebot and Miniforce kind of shelf. And the first rule of the top 10 is that I can't use a figure that I heavily modified. So this Miniforce figure is out, otherwise he'd probably be number one. And it has to be a figure I bought in 2021. So number 10 on the list is Cybertronevac. I'd actually bought this figure when he first came out. He's just got excellent looking proportions. The color scheme is really eye-catching and interesting. I actually don't like helicopters, but this figure just works really well. He's got really good articulation. Even though he has 3 gimmicks, he just ends up looking really good. I wanted the Galvatron version of this guy, but he was just out of my price range. Number 9 is Dinodraconis. He is customized, but he's only slightly modified for articulation, so I still count him. He's a really excellent looking figure, and I really like the aesthetics of this guy, but he's kind of not that fun to play with, and he's kind of a hassle and just like kind of poorly weighted, and the tolerances on this figure are a little bit iffy, so he's a little bit low on the list, even though I think he's probably the best looking robot I have. Though arguably he doesn't really look like a robot at all. Number 8 is this Earthrise? No, Kingdom Megatron. I have really fond memories and nostalgia of getting this figure, the original Beast Wars figure when he first came out on Christmas. I got him in Optimus Primal, which I really wanted, even though I wasn't really into Transformers then. So, of course, I still have a lot of that nostalgia. This is a great update of the figure, even though he's got really loose hips. And he's got rubber, but the rubber parts don't bother me so much because they're all mounted on plastic. So, he's not so high on the list because his transformation is just such a huge hassle. That's one thing I think they could have did a little bit better, but amazing looking figure. One of the top ones for sure. And number 7 is Siege Megatron. I don't know how much I actually like Megatron, but this is a really good update of the figure. It's got all the design cues and the things that I do like about Megatron. He turns into a tank. He's silver. I did give him a silver wash to make the metal look a little bit better. And then he's got this cool sword, which is a good nod to his G1 figure. And I think they just did a really great job on this figure for articulation, price point. I think everything on this guy is pretty much perfect. And number 6 is Super X10 Whitehorn, the deluxe version of this figure. Or the DX version rather. So this figure is just a lot of fun. He's a knight with a cape that looks like a shield. He turns into a Pegasus unicorn. Really, what more could you ask for? It's just such a cool fantasy figure. He's got terrible articulation, but I can forgive that because he's fun to transform and he's got 2 really impressive modes. Next up is Earthgranner Tyranotops. Please don't look at my videos and check the date on this. He's technically, I did not buy him in 2021, but anyway, I still say he makes the list. So he's a really huge, bulky figure, and despite that, he has excellent articulation, and he just feels really great in hand. He has an interesting transformation into 2 modes, into 2 vehicles, and he's got a pretty cool gimmick. So if you've never given this line a chance, you really should. I think these figures are extremely cheap right now, and it breaks my heart that this line ended and was only good for one series. Which brings us to number 4, Miniforce Keratank. Just the aesthetics on this guy are just really wonderful. He doesn't really look like a Keratops, but he transforms into a hybrid tank dinosaur, which is what's better than that, a tank dinosaur. And he comes with this huge bazooka. He's got fairly decent articulation, and the colors and the aesthetics of this guy just work really well for me. So you probably saw this review. I loved this figure when I got him, and he's still, unlike Dinodraconis, I still love this figure as much as when I got him. I still feel very strongly about this guy. And number 3 is Carbot Star Blaster. So this is a pretty old figure, so he's got really terrible articulation. He's a pretty typical Korean figure, just big, bulky, very simple transformation. But he turns into a drill dozer, which is one of my favorite vehicles. His little core robot basically turns into Mega Man Gyro Man, which I really like the aesthetics of. And he's just a lot of fun. He reminds me a lot of Gao Geiger or Brave. I just really like this aesthetic a lot. I wish there were more robots like this retro style. He's also a little bit of a cheat because I'm already thinking about how I can use him to combine with other robots and use him as an accessory pack. And that brings us to number 2, which is probably a surprise if you saw my review of this guy. I really enjoyed this robot mode. He was one of my favorite robots, but his alt mode was really terrible and very distracting for me. And I still really dislike this alt mode, but his robot mode is so good and the articulation is so good that Toebot Airhide just takes the spot for second place for me. He feels really good in hand. He's one of the figures I transformed the most, even though I got him towards the end of the year. And I have, of course, customization plans with this guy too, where he's going to become an accessory pack for another figure. So you can look for that in a new video later on. But number 2. And then finally, number 1 is Jurassic Cops Jupino, who is a cop robot who turns into a car. And he's got a Spinosaurus, which I found out is my favorite dinosaur, in his chest. He's got a great role-playing gimmick, which has this cool light-up core feature. He's got a head-changing gimmick, so he can have a different face. Check out my review on this guy. He's just one of the best robots, even though he's got some really big problems for articulation. He's still just really an impressive piece of engineering that's a lot of fun and has a lot of interesting things going for him. Even though his combined modes are kind of a problem, he's my number 1 spot. This is the guy that I like the most. And here they all are. So let me know, which ones do you think that I just put in the wrong category, shouldn't have been on the list? What are things that I maybe forgot about? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you next time.